The Honorable Patricia Wald is one of the most highly respected legal minds of our time. As the first woman to be appointed to the U.S. Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., Judge Wald has been a trailblazer in shaping legal policy and a champion for justice on the national and international stage. Born in 1928 in Torrington, Connecticut, Patricia McGowan was raised in a second-generation Irish immigrant family.
My father disappeared in the middle of the Depression when I was only 2 years old, so I never really knew him at all. My mother went back to work and I lived with her family there. Once I got to be 16 and could legally work, I used to work in the summer times in the factories.
It was this experience that would have a profound influence on her future life's work.
I got very interested in the labor movement, and actually when the labor union went on strike, I went on strike with them.
Patricia was valedictorian of her high school class and won a scholarship to attend Connecticut College for Women.
There were some really good teachers, and once I started reading the cases and we started discussing those in class, I knew at that point that I would love to do that the rest of my life.
When Patricia graduated from Connecticut College in 1948, she applied for a scholarship to attend Yale Law School.
Pat Wald's entry to Yale Law School is itself a landmark. At the time, women were not going to law schools in many parts of the country, and there were a few that admitted women, and she was one of 11 women in her class at Yale Law School.
Patricia was selected to be case editor and an officer on the highly prestigious Yale Law Review. While in law school, Patricia met her future husband, Bob Wald. After graduation, both Pat and Bob landed federal clerkships.
Women law clerks were unheard of. When I did take the clerkship and work down in New York, I was the only woman in the entire Second Circuit.
After completing her clerkship and working for a law firm in Washington, D.C., Pat learned she was pregnant and moved to Norfolk, Virginia to be closer to her husband, who was serving in the military.
And so it was 5 kids in 7 years. It was hectic, but I don't think any of us ever regretted it for a moment.
She really was a master of sort of being around, typing on a brief, at the same time having dinner going on. My dad would come home in the middle of all of that. So there was multiple kind of crises of one sort or another, as there would be with 5 kids in a family.
When the children were young, Mrs. Wald worked from home, researching and writing about criminal justice system issues.
She was a pioneer in thinking about the problems of the criminal justice system in the 60s and worked on something called the Bail Project, which helped us all reorganize the bail system.
From there, I worked for Sarge Shriver on the Poverty Project. I wrote 2 books during that period. From there, I was appointed by President Johnson to the D.C. Crime Commission.
In 1968, Patricia went to work as a legal service lawyer and worked in public interest law, advocating for the underserved.
She was one of the people who was putting forward this movement to try and get those who are disabled and who otherwise did not have a voice to bring cases in the courtroom, to have their rights respected.
In 1976, Jimmy Carter was elected president. I ended up being an assistant attorney general for legislative affairs. It gave me a great background for how legislation is made on the Hill.
In 1979, President Carter appointed Patricia Wald to the U.S. Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., the most important court in the country, second only to the Supreme Court.
At the time that Pat Wald is becoming a member of that court, there are many that have no women on them whatsoever, and this one never had a woman on it before.
After 7 years on the court, I became the chief judge. Now, that also made me the first woman chief judge on the D.C. court. I was chief judge for 5 years. I was fascinated with the workload because it got into every major issue of American life that's subject to regulatory power. The Environmental Protection Agency, labor relations, which of course was a favorite of mine, harking back to my own days in the factory.
Judge Wald wrote over 830 opinions and served as a mentor to over 70 law clerks during the 20 years she served on the U.S. Court of Appeals.
Judge Wald was definitely a mentor for all of us law clerks, but in a kind of very quiet way.
Right.
Very supportive of our own efforts to kind of figure out how to chart our own course in the law. She has inspired women like myself and others to see that there are no limits.
In 1999, Judge Wald was presented with an opportunity she couldn't pass up.
She's appointed by President Clinton to serve on the International Tribunal for the territories of the former Yugoslavia.
I sat on some fascinating cases, including the genocide at Srebrenica. I thought the notion of establishing that there could be a rule of law not just within countries, but a rule of law that transcended countries, that applied, throughout the civilized world, was something that if you could contribute toward, it was worthwhile doing.
Since leaving the International War Tribunal in 2001, Judge Wald has worked with the Open Society Justice Initiative, the American Bar Association, and Yale Law School. She has received many awards and honors, including the American Lawyer Hall of Fame Lifetime Achievement Award, the ABA Medal, and over 20 honorary degrees. In 2004, President Bush appointed Judge Wald to the Commission on Intelligence Capabilities with regards to weapons of mass destruction. In 2010, she served on the Constitution Project's Guantanamo Task Force, and that same year, President Obama appointed her to the Council of the Administrative Conference of the United States.
Pat Wald is a remarkable both leader, mentor, friend, colleague. She's a mixture of brilliant lawyer and compassionate human being who is very concerned about the nitty-gritty effects of law on people's lives.
Devoted mother, collaborative wife, beloved mentor, legal legend, visionary U.S. and international judge, lifelong champion for social justice, Patricia McGowan Wald.